This is English shorthand dictation number 271 and the dictation speed is 160 words per minute. Ready? Start. Honorable Chairman Sir, this bill concerns the security of this country. This amendment bill has been passed in the Lok Sabha in April. The bill moved by the Minister of External Affairs amends the Weapons of Mass Destruction and Their Delivery Systems Act 2005. The Act of 2005 prohibits manufacturing, transport or transfer related to weapons of mass destruction and their means of delivery. Weapons of mass destruction include biological weapons, chemical weapons and nuclear weapons. This amendment is to prevent persons or groups from financing such activities. The central government may freeze, seize or attach their funds, financial assets or economic resources, whether owned, held or controlled directly or indirectly. I would like to elaborate on the key features of the amendment bill. The Weapons of Mass Destruction and Their Delivery Systems Amendment Bill 2022 seeks to ban funding of weapons of mass destruction and also empowers the center to freeze and seize or attach financial assets and economic resources of the people engaged in such activities. Then the bill inserts a new provision stating that no person shall finance any activity which is prohibited under this Act or under the United Nations Security Council Act 1947 or any other relevant act for the time being in force or by an order issued under any such act in relation to weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. The punitive measures which have been given in this bill aim to give the government powers to freeze, seize or attach funds or other financial assets or economic resources owned or controlled directly or indirectly by such persons or derived or generated from the funds or other assets owned or controlled directly or indirectly by such persons. The financial sanction which has been mentioned in this bill empowers the government to prohibit making available funds, financial assets or economic resources for any prohibited activity in relation to weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. Sir, the passing of this bill will strengthen our country's position and specific changes in the earlier law were necessary so that the security of the country can be ensured. Upgrading a law which was 17 years old was necessary and thus it has come to this House for consideration and passing. Many other countries in the world have such legislations. The current requirement needs specific law and statutory ways to deal with the issue of national security. Therefore, I think that this amendment is absolutely necessary. Mr. Vice Chairman, Sir, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a few of my thoughts on the proposed amendments to the Weapons of Mass Destruction and Their Delivery Systems Act 2005. There have not been any amendments to the Act in the last 16 years of its inception, and I appreciate the introduction of such an important piece of legislation in the Parliament. Sir, I would like to share a few of my observations regarding the measures taken by the Centre in this regard. The first point is that India has remained on the forefront in matters of disarmament and reiterated the belief that nuclear weapons should be abolished in a step-by-step process which is echoed in the bill. Having committed to the policy of no first use since the year 2003, we have repeatedly stated that the usage of nuclear weapons would be of punitive retaliation in case of an attack. This bill also promotes our global efforts towards disarmament and strengthening the non-proliferation order, like supporting the Conference of Disarmament negotiations on an international convention prohibiting the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons and steps to reduce the risks associated. The second point is that the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1540 prevents individuals and organizations, including terrorist groups, from acquiring and spreading nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons and their means of delivery, while imposing obligations on all states regardless of their participation in existing treaties. India has fought a battle against terrorism for many decades. Thus, I wish to draw the attention to the dangers of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction as reiterated by our representatives at United Nations Security Council and request the international community to prevent possession and use of weapons of mass destruction by terrorist groups as per the recommendations of the United Nations Security Council. The next point is about biological weapons. We have repeatedly emphasized on following the Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention and pitched for strict compliance on banning production of the entire range of biological weapons of mass destruction. In the recent past, we have seen the widespread effects of COVID-19 pandemic, with reports indicating that coronavirus was manufactured in China as a biological weapon to mobilize biological warfare, posing it to be as dangerous as its nuclear and chemical counterparts. Such looming threats are a real threat, and though our armed forces are trained to prepare for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear attacks, more efforts ought to be considered. An Apex Center for Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Emergencies needs to be established on a priority basis. In addition to this, training exercises for our forces by institutions engaged in this field could be beneficial. Our enhanced international cooperation in science and technology needs to be discussed here. There is a need for international cooperation now more than ever to deal with the matters relating to the weapons of mass destruction, especially in times of fast developing technology. Efforts for promotion of peaceful uses of science and technology through technology transfer, sharing of information, and exchange of equipment are being encouraged by India, as indicated in the United Nations General Assembly resolution on role of science and technology in the context of international security and disarmament. These efforts could be augmented by facilitation of multilateral dialogues on current developments in science and technology and their potential impact on international security and disarmament efforts. The next point is about increasing criminal liability. In the Act of 2005 for aiding non-state actors and for violation of other provisions of the Act, there is no mention of an amount which would be liable as a fine. Unauthorized exports of weapons of mass destruction are punishable with fines ranging from Rs 3 lakh to Rs 20 lakh, and only a repeat offence results in imprisonment for a 6-month period, extendable up to 5 years. Offenders convicted under the Act often have strong financial backing, and such an amount is minuscule in comparison. Therefore, I urge the Centre to levy more severe fines on the convicted offenders. I commend the efforts made by the Centre to contribute to elimination of weapons of mass destruction and implementing crucial steps to ensure their effective control. This bill is a step forward to counter the threat posed by these weapons. Honorable Vice Chairman Sir, I am very thankful to you for giving me this opportunity to participate in the discussion on an important piece of legislation for the welfare of the humankind. The bill is intended to insert certain provisions to the Principal Act to prohibit financing of any activity in relation to weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. The Principal Act covers unlawful activities relating to biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons and their delivery systems, and provides for integrated legal measures to exercise controls over the export of materials, equipment, and technologies in relation to weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems, and for prevention of their transfers to non-state actors or terrorists. The biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons are severe threat to the humankind. In this perspective, a question assumes significance. Are we prepared for a full-fledged biological, chemical, and nuclear warfare? I wish to know from the Honorable Minister about the mechanism that has been put in place to face such a warfare. I urge upon the government to constitute a group of ministers comprising the Ministers of Health and Family Welfare, Defence, Chemicals and Fertilizers, and External Affairs to draw and implement a national level plan to confront and counter any possible biological, chemical, and nuclear warfare. Sir, this House is aware that when there was the first phase of COVID-19 pandemic across the world, everybody felt and believed that it was a biological warfare and that the COVID-19 virus was released from a lab of a country. Though the possibilities of such things could not be avoided, we must be very careful and cautious in facing such things. Here I would like to know whether the provisions of the original Act were not sufficient to deal with this subject also. Section 15 of the original Act makes a mention about the punishment for aiding non-state actor or terrorist. The existing provision in the original Act itself is very clear, but I can understand that there is no provision to seize the property. But at the same time, the punishment and other measures are already taken care of. Finally, I am fully with the Honorable Minister and the government in ruthlessly crushing the financing of any activity which is trying to help in producing weapons of mass destruction. I just wish to seek one clarification. The Honorable Minister should clarify what the government has done to ensure that critical research on such technologies is not impeded due to this legislation.